afternoon, dear participants, speakers from Geneva Cities Hub. We are very, very happy to start this webinar co-organized with the ISO on international standards in support of cities and local authorities development agenda. This session, as you heard, is recorded. We will have a distinguished line of panelists with a lot of important and interesting information to share. That's why I would not want to make it very long, our introduction. Just thank our partners from ISO, especially Andrea Barrios Villarreal and Vai for their excellent cooperation and initiative, because we really believe that this is an example how we can serve the role of platform to link an international organization and local and regional governments in order to learn from each other and in order to strengthen the cooperation. So without any further ado, I'm happy to share with my co-moderator, partner Andrea, the floor. Please, Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Andras, and thank you very much to the Geneva City Hub for hosting us today. At ISO, we think it's very important that we make this link between cities and standards, so that cities can understand how international standards can help them reach the goals and face the challenges. Also, for us, it's very important because international standards are only relevant if they are useful. And for that, we need to know what the city's needs are and how we can help them address these needs. So first, I have the pleasure to introduce you to Marcel Netsch. He is our keynote speaker. Mr. Netsch is the Chief Core Business Officer and a member of the Executive Board in SNV, the Swiss Association for Standardization. He has a degree in industrial engineer from ABB Baden in Switzerland. He has more than 20 years of experience in electronic manufacturing engineering, surface mount, and production management. He has been responsible for management systems ISO 9001 and ISO 17025. For the past 6 years, Marcel has worked for SNV, and in 2021, he was elected as a member of the ISO Technical Management Board for the term 2022-2024. Marcel.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Dear Geneva City Hub, dear ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome you today to the Geneva Cities Hub for the hybrid event on international standards in support of cities and local authorities development agenda. I'm delighted to see such a large audience, both on site and of course online. I would like to thank you in advance for your participation. The Geneva Cities Hub offers you a wide range of events at which current topics are discussed. On October 3, 2022, for example, the focus was on United Nations Sustaining Development Goal number 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. Did you know that the variety of international standards support also SDG 11? The Geneva Cities Hub aims to better connect cities, local and regional authorities with the international Geneva ecosystem. Switzerland as a whole is very proud to have this ecosystem with international companies, associations, the United Nations, CERN, etc. in Geneva. The purpose of the Geneva Cities Hub is to connect all relevant stakeholders. GCH is a platform that pursues three main objectives. First, facilitating participation of cities and their networks in relevant multilateral processes and bodies. Second, facilitating partnerships between cities, their networks, and Geneva-based international organizations and other entities. And third, urban mainstreaming by providing a space to discuss urban issues and enhance the visibility of the urban work of Geneva-based actors. Today, we have distinguished speakers for this hybrid event. Technical Committee Chairperson from ITU-T, IEC and ISO. All these standardization organizations are based in Geneva. The technical committees chaired by today's speakers working for the benefit of the society and of course in support of cities and local governments. We have here a great expertise in the field of water systems, water reuse, sustainable cities and communities, smart cities, environment, climate change, and circular economy. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a member of a village council of Soitzach, Switzerland, a small village of 7,600 citizens. The challenges these chairpersons who will speak to you are working on are exactly the challenges we face in our own community. I would like to thank the Geneva City Hub and all those involved in organizing and hosting this event. My thanks also goes to ISO for giving me the opportunity to provide you with my opening remarks. City leaders are working to develop intelligent transport systems, water management, business continuity, and community resilience. Their aim is to build safe, sustainable, and adaptable cities that are best able to face challenges. They use recommendations, studies, best practices, and of course, international standards to formulate the best public policies for their citizens. International organizations such as ISO, IEC, and ITU have developed a wide range of standards in key areas. Their aim is to support policymakers and improve the quality of life for citizens. These standards are written by experts around the world and from different stakeholder groups. Government stakeholders are very important to the overall standard process and can bring a particular point of view to a committee to improve the standards. Standard users use the available standards to improve their own product, service, or community. This is an important step in the right direction and will indeed take the standard users a big step forward. However, standard makers go even further. By actively participating in a standards committee, you have the opportunity to contribute your expertise to standards and shape them to your needs. Your valuable input is very welcome. In this context, I would like to quote Dr. Peter Roth of Hilti Corporation, Sean Lichtenstein, convener of CEN-TC 213 Working Group 1, cartridge-operated handheld tools safety. You either standardize or you get standardized. That's his point of view, and he is so true. I would like to invite you to find out more about how you can use international standards for smart, sustainable, and resilient cities. This event today will provide an opportunity for dialogue between local authorities and experts from ISO, IEC, and ITU to learn from each other about the way in which standards can be developed and applied in the following areas: water management, digitalization, and lower carbon emission. In addition, I would like to encourage you to consider becoming an active member of a standards committee. This will give you the opportunity to contribute your expertise and make existing and new standards even better. Thank you very much for your participation today in this distinguished event, and I wish you a fruitful afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcel. Now I have the pleasure to introduce you to the two speakers that we're going to have for water management, which is our first topic. This is Dr. Isabelle Bandejo and Dalia Jaron. Dr. Isabelle has been the Group Suez Standardization Manager for 10 years and a member of the Scientific Committee of the French Professional Federation of Water Companies for even longer. After a PhD in agronomy and research at the French National Research Institute for Agriculture, Food and Environment, she has worked in the water and water sector by Suez for 30 years on national and international projects related to water services, sanitation, and waste management. Isabelle is chairman of the ISO Technical Committee on Drinking Water, Wastewater, and Stormwater System and Services, and she's involved as a French expert in several ISO and CEN technical committees on topics such as sustainable cities and communities, circular economy, water reuse, and sludge management. She was a member of the ISO Strategic Advisory Group on Smart Cities when it was created. She's also a member of several strategic orientation committees of the French standardization body, AFNOR, and she works with regulators to facilitate the implementation of standards and promote standardization programs. Dalia Yarom. Ms. Yarom is the chair of ISO Technical Committee on Water Reuse. Currently, she is the director of Standardization Division in SII, the Standards Institute of Israel, and a former laboratory manager with extensive experience in management, determining national strategies for standardization, relations with stakeholders, and initiating and establishing testing procedures for consumer products according to national and international standards. She's an engineer with a master's degree in chemistry and a master's degree in business administration. She has more than 20 years of experience in management at various levels at SII, which includes involvement in setting policy and strategy, writing and negotiating work plans for various units, and ongoing control over their implementation, including the income and budget utilization program. Welcome both of you, and thank you very much for joining us today. I would like to start first with a general question. And it is, what are the guiding principles for developing indicators for city services, especially in this case on water-scarce cities? Isabel, would you like to start?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Could you repeat the sentence, please? Because the question I didn't heard.
So what are the guiding principles for developing indicators for city services, especially in the case of water-scarce cities?
I think there are many guiding principles and to develop indicators. We need to have standards, and there are guidelines such as 24/510 and 11 and 12, where you can find indicators that are adapted to your needs. And I think that this is very important for to improve the service in consistency with these standards, because for the managers of the cities, it will be a help to follow their to follow the performance of their service, and then to improve the relation to their users, because they will have data, and data is very important for them to provide information to their citizens.
Okay, thank you very much, Isabel. Dalia, any thoughts on this?
Yes, of course. I think that Isabel just gave us a very good answer on the indicators. But if we look into the indicators, they are just a tool for the city managers, how to reduce costs, how to bring the city more good results. And if we look for instance, in the water field, we need to just reduce water depreciation, because water is very expensive. I know I'm coming from Israel, and we this year we have no rains at all in Israel. So water is very expensive. We need to keep an eye on our usage of water. And if you can reduce the depreciation, and you have an indicator, a good indicator, that you can compare your city with another city, then you have a common language, which is very important in the area of standards. We establish a common language that you can compare. You can compare your results with the results of your neighbors or other cities like you all over the world.
Continue with you, Dalia, and you mentioned budget and costs. And that's a huge constraint for cities and local authorities. How can standards help at the same time majors who need to refurbish their existing water infrastructure and majors of future cities building new city infrastructures?
Well, you know, both cases, the mayors should save money. Okay, it's not very different between one case and the other case. And when you need to save money, then you have to get some tools in order to monitor how you save money. And I was talking about reducing depreciation, but you can look at another point that you can save money, and this is how you plan where to put or where to establish your wastewater treatment plants. You know, wastewater we use in the city, especially to irrigate parks or courses or for the benefit of the citizens. And if, for instance, you have a city like we have here in Tel Aviv, which we have a one central park. It's not the central park in New York, of course, but it's a very nice one. And if you have one nice central park, then you will need a central plant. And if you compare it to cities that they disperse their gardens, and then you have to disperse your plants. So the standards helps you to take into the consideration all the needs of the city, all the specialties of your own city, in order to establish the most economic situation and to look into your wastes.
Thank you, Dalia. Isabel, what about this topic and the experience of Group Suez? And
yes, I think that in both cases, the legitimacy of investment decision of mayors relies really on a high degree of confidence on the overview of the status of city water infrastructure. And standards, they will provide them expected reliability and improve access to the relevant information. And it's key for an appropriate decision making. And it's what we have done in the past with some cities in Jordania, for example. And I think that a good asset management process, such as described in the 24/5/16 series that we use there, will help to be performant in this field. And so we were more successful in Jordania when we apply for an ISO 55001 asset management certification. That was the proof that it was good, well done. But I think all the set of standards was helped that to prove, and it may strengthen the citizens' confidence and commitment. And so I think the mayors, and the cities, they will gain time because they will benefit from the good practices that the standard developers have put in the text. And so I think also that they will need to anticipate new challenges linked to climate change in the future. And we experience that now that it's coming. And to the availability of assessment principle for the adaptation to climate change impact, it will secure their technical services to anticipating risk. And it's why they are interested in discussing with us with such type of standards basis. And I think also that for a city, the standard will improve. We provide the selection of the best adaptive response approach they can use. And this will also be tackled in standards in development. And moreover, I think our experience is that appropriate governance, such as described in ISO 24540, is key for the implementation of any decision for their water infrastructure. And because it brings the allocation of responsibilities, its outcome of such standards, and also it provides them with transparency procedures that will facilitate support of the citizens. So that's such type of feedbacks we have.
Thank you, Isabel. I'm going to continue with you because you mentioned about the new challenges that cities are facing, like climate change. And I would like for you to elaborate on what are the right arguments for city leaders to spend resources on applying emergency management standards, because in what we call like peacetime, they are not necessary, but knowing that they are there when they will be needed.
I think with the climate change, the city leaders, they will need to understand that the citizens are really sensitive more and more to about the water supply risk, and the perception of the citizens is evolving. They need to be secured that the services will be provided. And therefore, with the climate change issue, I think they need to be convinced that the city leaders are how can I say that they manage the situation properly, and any standards that provide them with and help for fighting against climate change issues, and also to provide to have a rational use of water, such as the ISO 46001, which is can be certified by third parties, is for them a way to show to the citizens that they have things in hand, and that they can that the situation, they can face the situation linked to the climate change. And so the standard compliance will be for them a source of serenity for the mayor, because they can prove something to the citizens, and also for the citizens it will be a source of well-being, because they can be sure that everything will be controlled and managed in a proper way. And it will also help to provide to prevent them from water distribution interruption, for example, which are increasing fears of the citizens in the countries when water became scarce.
Yeah. Thank you, Isabel. I think Dalia can share a lot of experience on Israel, especially on emergency management standards.
Yes, first of all, I totally agree with Isabel. Citizens do need to know that they are in good hands, and they will have water even in times of crisis. You know, water is a very basic need of human being. It's not only for drinking and irrigation, it's for many, many uses. So I totally agree with Isabel. I think you asked about peacetime. I don't think that there is a peacetime nowadays. The world suffers from extreme drought or floods. Cities, you know, you are on both sides most of the time. So cities must be prepared for this immediately. I don't think that they have time to just consider if they want to be prepared or no. I think that there is no time, and they should prepare themselves immediately, and the standards give them a good tool to be prepared. There's a case that after the Fukushima disaster in Japan, I believe that most of you are aware to this disaster. The city, the area was prepared. They used the standards, and this is a good example that because they were prepared in accordance with the standards, the city could manage in a short time to restore the water supply to the citizens and operate the sewage treatment facilities. It's also very important in times of floods. When we talk about the standards are for managing water crisis. You know, behind all those numbers that Isabel mentioned, there is a real guideline how to manage water crisis. It's a series of standards, and it's based, like all management standards, they're based on the PDCA cycle. You know, the one that you plan, you do, you check, you act, and then again you plan again. And among the series, you can find the standards on topics like crisis management of water utilities, guidelines of alternative water services for distribution. You know, distribution of water, this is again one very important thing in times of crisis, and more.
Thank you, Talia. So we are going to open the floor for questions. So if you have any questions, please write them down. I have 2 minutes. So before we open the floor, I would like to ask you very briefly, both of you, how do we convince citizens of the benefits of standards and that they actually contribute to their well-being rather than just being a constraint? So Isabel, like in 1 minute.
I think that you can convince them because you will use, for example, certification of the standards and conformity to the standards by a third party will be a way. And there is a standards on rational use of water, as I said, 26001, and it will be approved to be consistent with, compliant with the standards, will approve for the citizens that you are managed things well, and that you are not, you are prepared for that, and you are not in an urgency situation, as mentioned by Dalia before. Where there are other standards to manage urgent situation, you are prepared, and it's also a way to convince citizens that you have all the tools, all the procedures, all the that have in place to be ready when there are problems. That you have long-term plan, but you have also urgency procedures, and all is in place. You have to think about that in peacetime, and so everything is under control. And I think it's a proof for the citizens, and you can inform them thanks to all the data you have, all the procedures. You can have traceability also of all what you do. And this is the standards is looking to all those aspects, and in particular to the information to the users. And this will be a help. For any questions, the citizens will ask for you. And if you have good response, then the citizens will be confident, and then there will some serenity, well-being, and they know that you will implement everything rapidly, efficiently, and without problem. And on your side, you will also save time in answering them, because you know exactly you have all the response to them prepared also, because you have the data. And so as time is money, I think you will be successful in your discussion with the citizens.
Okay, thank you, Isabel. Dalia, in 1 minute, because we are going.
Okay, I will try to do it rapidly, but you know, we are all citizens, and we want to know that our mayors are using the budget, the money that we give them to as a budget, that they use it in a very efficient way. So standards is a good tool to show how efficient the use of water is done, and then you can use it for the well-being of the residents. As I already mentioned, reducing depreciation allows you more money, so you can have more water to irrigate and establish more parks, more courses, and even to reduce the costs of water for the citizens. And then if you use the standards and you show that using the standards reduce the costs, then you will be a good standard user. And I believe that standard is it's a good tool to do it for your citizens and for your city as well.
Thank you, Dalia. Do we have any questions from the participants?
There's one, and it's already answered by Michael on chat.
You can see that in the chat. Okay. We have a comment. I'm not sure, to be honest, what. Okay, we have an answer, I guess. We will reply to all of your comments offline, because some of them are quite big, so we don't have time. There's one before that I'm not sure what it refers. They're asking me to ask the speakers to refer to international operational standards, and they provide an example of Canada. I don't know if any of you know about this. I'm not sure what this. Yeah, so we will look into that, and we will reply to you. Thank you very much, Dalia. Thank you very much, Isabel, for being here today and sharing all this knowledge with us. I hope that we have learned a lot. Thank you very much, Andra.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the speakers. I think it was a very deep dive start for our discussion. Myself, I learned a lot. I'm sure the other audience as well. It's my pleasure to continue our discussion with the second panel on digitalization and present the two speakers of this panel. On my left here in person, Dr. Bernard Gindros, and online, Michael Molken. Dr. Bernard Gindros is since 2014 an independent consultant on energy, environment, climate change, smart cities and communities, and transport, with a special focus on innovation, policy, standardization and digitalization. He is active in standardization as chairman of several technical committees and bodies, including the energy sector, smart cities, hydrogen and blockchain. Smart cities, obviously, one of the issues of today. He's also an EU expert on adaptation to climate change, we heard about, hydrogen technologies and infrastructures, as well as in circular economy and smart and sustainable development of cities and communities. I think a very hot topic of the day. He has been the EU representative of European Energy Award for 10 years and has been involved in innovation policy and competitiveness issues for more than 30 years. He has been working for the French Navy, if I know correctly, and the French Environment and Energy Management Agency as regional director and head of Industry and Innovative Technologies Department, Deputy Director for Sustainable Cities and Territories, and Director for Energy, Air and Noise. The other panelist on this topic will be colleague Michael Molken, who has also spent nearly 30 years partnering with cities, rural areas and industry on how technology can help neighborhoods and cities to work better. For the last 10 years, he has been focusing on the development and the implementation of smart and sustainable city standards. He is technical author of 2 British Standards Institution publications and the main editor of the UN support U4SSC deliverable on redefining smart city platforms. He is chair of several committees and an active member of Smart City Standards within ISO, our partner today. He was a member of the ITU Smart and Sustainable Cities Focus Group as well. He is City Standards Associate with the Connected Places Catapult, the UK Government Innovation Agency for Smart Transport and Smart Cities, and is a member of the UK Government External Advisory Group on Secure Connected Places. He also works with open and agile smart cities to support development. I think their presence is a guarantee for a very interesting discussion on digitalization. And I would like to start with our general question, but also with a little bit more specific one. The general question, as Andrea also already mentioned, what are the guiding principles for developing indicators for city services? In that case, of the smart cities and digitalization. But more precisely, for you, what are the areas where digitalization standards can help most of a people-centered city management? Bernard, can we start with you, please?
Yes, thank you very much. I think we had already some inputs from the previous series of questions. However, in our field, more generally speaking, in the smart cities approach, a sustainable development of cities approach, we need to have this holistic vision, permanently holistic vision, integrating planning spirit. And for that, what is very important is to identify what type of indicators will reflect the situation, the local context, and help to understand how we will improve the different situations from actions we develop. So, of course, there are a few series of indicators of performance that can be set immediately, but there is also many different indicators that will come from the cities themselves. What type of data do I have? What type of information do I already use in my daily business? And because this is something already integrated in the business, and we need to be sufficiently flexible and open to collect what cities will provide to us. Based on that, of course, the challenge of these indicators of performance also lies in the fact that we would like to develop benchmark of best practice. So we should be able to compare apple with apples, and so having similar set of indicators if we want to help other cities to get inspiration from existing experience and practices in other cities.
Thank you very much. Michael, would you come and contribute?
Hi. So first of all, just to say how much I regret not being with you in person. The strange thing is that I'm going to be in Geneva from Sunday and this coming Sunday until the 10th of February. So I'll be there, but it just felt coming a bit early might be a bit too much away from my own bed. So, but I love Geneva, and I think it's great, this idea of bringing together, cities and other stakeholders to think about international standards. The importance of digitalization and digital standards is because cities are really difficult to manage. You have city managers who are trying to make decisions based on incomplete information, out-of-date information, maybe wrong information. There may be procedures that are meant to be carried out by the departments that they manage that actually aren't being carried out. Things may be done differently to what they're supposed to be, but often managers don't know these things. So the first challenge that city managers face is that they don't really understand quite what's going on, enough about what's going on in their cities to be able to make really informed decision. And very often they're having to do with making decisions based on their own guesswork, their best understanding of what's going on. And that, of course, is a challenge. And also because of that, because of the lack of really good, effective comprehensive data, up-to-date data, it often means that citizens find it very difficult to trust the decisions that are being made because they can't see why decisions are being made, what evidence is being used to make the decisions that relate so much to their lives. So digitalization is a really important thing for cities because it enables very good information for city managers, but also it enables the evidence to be made available, transparency and so on to be made, to be put in place to allow the citizens to get a real understanding of what's happening and why it's happening in the city. And of course, the other key thing, which I think was alluded to by Bernard earlier, is the fact that still a lot of all of the systems in the city tend to be managed in isolation from each other, in silos. Not only is it difficult for individual city managers to know quite what's happening in the system they manage, but it's also difficult to get an overall sense of how all of these things fit together. And very often decisions can be made by one manager that makes sense within their own system, transport or health or education or whatever it is, that may negatively impact on other aspects of city life. And so again, it's very difficult when city managers are making decisions without enough data. And the whole point of digitalization is that what that does is it enables the city to collect information, up-to-date, accurate information about what's happening in the city. And as they collect that, to be able to get a good sense of historical data as well, how things happened in the future, in the past, what problems were caused, how they were dealt with, and to build up very comprehensive evidence. And this is where standards are so important, because as cities start to collect and share data more and more, they need to make sure that that data is managed securely, that that data can be easily found by the right people to be able to use it, that terms and conditions for use can be set and complied with to make sure that as data is made available, it's only made available to people who are authorized, properly authorized to use it, and to use it in properly authorized ways. Citizens' privacy, geospatial, how can we have a common way of identifying where things are, how things are moving, lots of important issues of digitalization that a city needs to be able to manage well. And that's where there are many, many standards that have been built and are being built that can help cities in doing that. So the first thing is, you know, the whole purpose, I think, of digitalization is actually to help managers to be able to manage that city better, more holistically and more focused on the citizen. Of course, there are indicators, and indicators are really important for this, and standards can help do that. Bernard's well made the case. I'd like to also, though, mention that there's something that's also important in terms of, if you like, city assessment, and that's maturity models. There's some very good maturity models that have been developed by Standards Organization, ISO TC268, ISO TC268 SC1, have developed some very good maturity models which help a city to assess how different aspects of the way it's managing the city, the maturity of those, to identify where more attention needs to be placed, what they need to focus on first in terms of moving the city forward. And so I would suggest that actually maturity models are a great place to start, because that helps a city to work out where it needs to prioritize its efforts. And then it can look to the tried and tested indicators to say, okay, which of these key performance indicators that have been developed by standards organizations can I really focus on to help make sure that I'm really moving forward in developing what I need? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Michael. Actually, you partially answered already my next question. So I would just come back to you with one question regarding data privacy. But before that, let me turn to Bernard. do smart city standards, you think, aim for the efficiency of running a city? That's Michael mentioned several times, or the well-being of the citizens. And we also talked about data privacy. Do you think that standards can guarantee balance between privacy, data privacy, and the comfort of using these data?
Well, to your first question, I would definitely say both. It will support the management of the city, but it will also support the citizen well-being, of course. Why? Because first of all, we have to understand that local authorities, mayors, municipality council have a huge weight on the shoulder. It's one of the most complex situations for managing large communities, managing multi-sectoral activities and issues. So it's a really, really high challenges. And again, we can just be extremely, let's say, impressed by what these local authorities are doing on a daily basis. However, one of the difficulty, and it was already said in the previous discussion, citizens have very high expectations. They want to be sure the money, that's what also that we have said before, the money, the budget, municipality budget, city budget, is used in a fair manner, transparent. And that's again where also standards could bring transparency and some rules, robust rules for ensuring a consistency. Having said that, most of the time, what is very difficult is having a good balance between political priorities and citizen expectation. It means that many of the politicians are willing to develop or implement their strategy within the duration of their term, which is today, when we are facing these big challenges in the world, climate change and a lot of things, resource efficiency, demography also, it is much too short. We need to engage in a long-term vision that is much longer than the term, the political term. And that's where and why it is so important to engage with the citizens in the decision-making process and in the governance process. If you have the citizens committed to support and to co-develop these type of long-term strategies, then political fear to be not re-elected in 3, 4, 5 years from now will disappear. And it is exactly where standards could bring some guidance, how to develop or to get a vision, long-term vision, how to set some strategic priorities, how to develop some roadmaps, options, and how to implement them, and checking that progress against expectation are really going in the right direction. So again, standards support both the management of a city, expectation of the citizens through engagement of the citizens. That's the first point. Then also briefly to the second question, for doing so, and especially in the digital world, we need a lot of data. We have a lot of data. We also have a lot of misuse of the data. There's some fake news, fake information being used, but much severe than that. Also some cybersecurity issues, individual attack to people. So privacy could be really impacted. Standards is also here to set the rules for proper use of this data, for setting barriers to avoid misuse of the information and guaranteeing a proper operational applications of this data. And this is again where there is an urgency with all our different standardization organizations to urge in the development of all this type of rules, barriers, or guides to ensure proper use of data in support of this city management and development of robust, effective, efficient, safe and secure services for the well-being of the citizens. I can speak hours on that, but I want to stop here. We know we have time constraint.
Yes, but we have time constraint, but it's a very interesting topic. So let me reformulate my question, Michael, and coming back to this comfort of data and the privacy of data. Do you think there are regional differences between these two aspects and the priorities between the two? And if yes, do you think that international standards can help to bridge these differences?
Well, of course, there are regional differences. I think what's important is to be able to manage things effectively. I think everybody all around the world agrees that privacy is important. They agree that it's important for me as an individual to know that my data is not going to be misused, that I'm not going to find that for various reasons people find things out about me that they shouldn't and are able then to misuse that information to damage my interest in some way or another. And that's a very important principle which everybody acknowledges. On the other hand, there's also the issue about community benefit. And very often there can seem to be a tension between the fact that if a government, national, city government or whatever, is able to get comprehensive information about all the citizens and what's happening, it may help them to provide some value, not necessarily to the individual citizen, but to help make the whole community function better in different ways. And this issue about how much of my data can be shared in a way that can support community benefit, that's where the differences are. It's not about people don't think privacy is important, but it's a question of, is my individual interest more important, or is the interests of the community in which I live, and what the right balance is? And I think that's where obviously we can't dictate to individual cities and individual countries how they should balance these things out, but it's very important to provide, using standards, the tools that can help the data that relates to me to be managed in a way that takes into account the balance in that particular region of the world. And I think one of the things that's happening, we're very proud, I think, in Europe of the kind of GDPR type legislation that's been taken up by many countries in the world as regulation to help give the citizen comfort in that. But one of the challenges is that it means that because there are very rigorous rules to make sure that my data can only be used in certain ways, it can make it difficult for public administrations to be able to use that data to tackle community issues, because each time they'd have to come back to me and check, is it all right that we use your data in this new way that we hadn't thought about before? And I think what's very interesting is the fact that that there are agencies such as the Solid Initiative, Tim Berners-Lee working on, My Data Global, that's looking at, again, how to find ways where the citizen can have control of their data, but in a way that will allow that data to be used in ways that the citizen's happy with and can be done it more effectively. And there's a sort of a set of minimal interoperability standards that are being developed by cities and by agencies such as those to help try and tackle this issue about how to make sure my personal data is managed effectively, but it can still be used to the wider benefit of the community. And I think this is the interesting thing, that it's not that there's no standards or there's great international standards, but what happens is that when there's a need identified, that agencies come together, they look for ways to begin to provide minimal interoperability, minimal but sufficient interoperability to let things happen. And then international standards bodies can use that information as to what's working and build on that and make it more substantial and something that can be taken as a solid international standard. So this is often the way we make standards internationally. We don't invent them out of the top of our head. We look and see who's developing good practice, and then how can we build on that practice to help make sure that these issues are tackled.
Thank you very much, Michael. That brings me to my last question, and I saw in the chat another interesting question. So I would like to ask you to elaborate a little bit on how can international organizations offer tailor-made standards, if they can, for different types of cities all around the world. And also the question from the chat, all these systems require maintenance, and maintenance requires skills and expertise. How do you see, how can you or standardization in general contribute to this question? May I start with you, Bernard?
Yeah, okay. To your first point, I'd like to say, of course, we have to consider the local context. We have to consider the real situation. So it's very important to have on board a representative from the cities. The way we are developing standards in the different standardization organizations is to engage with local, so at national level, standardization bodies that are organizing what we call mirror committees, mirror to the main technical committee we have at ISO, IEC, etc. And in these mirror committees, we need to ensure, and in the case of the technical committee I'm chairing, it is the case, we have to ensure that the representatives are coming from cities. They know what is needed from a city's perspective. So that's very important. And it is reflected in the way we will then draft and write the standards. That's the first point. But just to give you a practical example about these tailor-made approaches, within the ISO Technical Committee 268 on sustainable cities and communities, I have the great honor and pleasure to chair. In fact, we developed a management system standards. That is a kind of guiding the local authorities in their long journey from setting a vision, strategy, a roadmap, implementing them, and developing, collecting all the information, monitoring them in order to compare against the expectations, compare the progress again. However, it will mainly depend on the different domain parameters to be considered in this management system. Will depend on the context, will depend on the size of the cities, or where the cities is located in the world, what is the economic situation, what is the areas of responsibility of cities. It's not the same everywhere. And we developed then some implementation guidance or guidelines of this management system dedicated to some specific context. For instance, our colleagues from China and France has suggested to develop something dedicated to the business district. That is a special part of the city, sometimes outside the city. Same for, let's say, technopoles or technoparks, things like that. Same for small and medium-sized cities, where there is probably no need to have the degree of complexity that you can find in very large megapoles, for instance. And all is developed like that because expression of needs came from countries or specific types of cities. I saw the question about the maintenance, and I can also make the parallel. Indeed, regularly we need to revisit standards to be sure they are still effective and efficient, and we need most of the time to update because of things has changed, or regulations, or context, etc., etc. It is indeed difficult to engage with a lot of countries where resources, personal resources, but also financial resources, it's difficult. But it is again why we count on collecting expression of needs from each different countries. In my technical committee, we have 72 countries. A bit more, 42 are extremely active, so they participate to almost all different meetings. And they come from all the 5 continents, in fact. And of course, we have some comments, some inputs that are completely different from the United States, Europe, and Africa, or even a few South America as well. But in this part of the world, where they have less resources most of the time, financially and people, they are extremely active and proactive. And they can also bring a lot of benefit to the entire community. And at the end, we have also the responsibility in our countries to ensure the emerging country will not reproduce the mistake we did 10 or 20 years ago. And this is the best manner to gather all these type of talents around the table and to exchange and understand their own expectations. So ISO is also supporting, I think it's still the case, the kind of few emerging countries in providing some finance for them to participate to technical committees or meetings. And in our case, it has been extremely efficient. we gain something like 10 or 12 countries from Africa, and they are active, which is a good sign. We need to strengthen this type of relation. It also opens opportunities for other type of business between countries and cities, and engagement that is for the sake of all citizens around the world, and contribute to the climate change that is global. Even if we have to act locally, it is a global issue.
Thank you very much, Bernard. We are slightly running over time, so Michael, I would like to ask you a short answer to this not so easy question.
Indeed. So just picking up on what Bernard said, I think just to unpick it slightly, one of the important parts of the way that ISO and IEC are organised is that we're based on the national standards bodies, as Bernard has said. And what we see is that quite a number of national standards bodies are developing national standards related to smart cities and sustainable cities. And in Europe, you've got the European standards bodies, and they're developing standards that are focused around the needs of Europe. And that's great, because it means that they can be very tailored to particular countries and particular regions of the world. And that's obviously true. China, Korea are developing many standards within their own countries. And when we take it to the international level, we build on the good practice that's been developed in Europe, in the US, America, Asia, and we find out what are the common threads of those things. And so there's really good common sets of principles that can be applied anywhere. And that often means you can really say to any size city as well. So that's the very good thing about this sort of layered approach to standards. And of course, the fact is that although cities are very different from each other and take pride in being very different from each other, all cities have lots of things they have to do that are the same. They have to collect the rubbish, they have to make sure the roads work properly, that transport. So there's a whole set of issues that are common to all cities. And what we're trying to do in our standardization is to come up with principles that will help all cities to be able to manage these common issues that they have.
Thank you very much for this encouraging final word on this question. And thank you for the other speakers to replying in the meantime online. I think it is a really fruitful discussion between cities and our experts. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much, Bernard. We will continue with our third topic on low carbon emission. I think as exciting as the first two was. Our speakers will be Mr. Xiangfeng Dong and Mr. Dominique Burgess. Let me present them briefly. Mr. Xiangfeng Dong has extensive expertise and practices on smart sustainable city development and standardization in China since 2002 and has founded Utopath Group in 2009. He has served over 50 cities, accommodating the well-being of 40 million citizens. You might have been the ideal speaker as well to answer the previous question on governance and citizens. Since 2013, he has actively contributed to the development of several ISO deliverables for sustainable cities and communities, with a specific focus on management system, low carbon and smart cities. As the convener for PC 268/TG1 on awareness raising, communication and promotion, he has organized several open webinars for the ongoing projects under development to collect external views and needs since 2020. He's also serving as the deputy chair for Shanghai Society of Sustainability Association and the committee manager for transaction assurances in e-commerce at ISO. And our last but definitely not least speaker, Dominique Burgess, is currently the chairman of the ITU Study Group 5 on Environment, Climate Action, Sustainable Digitalization and Circular Economy. He is Director of Institutional Relations for Standardization within Orange in France. He has responsibility for relationships with international organizations like ours. involved in standardization activities at national and international level. He is also vice chair at ITU and also active in many issues such as green ICT, network security, relations between carriers, broadcasting standardization, and so on. Within the European Commission, he is member of the European ICT Standardization Policy Multi-Stakeholder Platform for ICT Standardization. He is also member of the French National Standardization Organization Strategic Committee. Previously, he has been responsible for France's Telecom's external relations, so he can bring also us a view from the private sector. So my question to you, gentlemen, is on one hand, as to the others, the guiding principles for developing indicators for city services when we are talking about resilient cities and low carbon emission to mitigate climate change. But also let me start with a very concrete question. What are the key areas in cities that can potentially contribute to lower carbon emissions? Let me start with you, Chantal, please.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, thanks. Yes, from my view, actually, for cities, the carbon emissions really come mostly from the energy aspect through several main sectors. Firstly, the energy supply side, that's about the power sector, which includes the percentage of the power generated out of the clean energy or renewable energies, such as the solar, wind, or geothermal power, etc. Also about the storage of energy, and also the grid, such as the smart grid or microgrid application, which can significantly change lower the carbon emission. And secondly, from the demand side, that's about the construction sector. This includes the lower the energy consumption by buildings, which includes the energy saving materials, improving heat isolation performance of building envelopes, smart controlling systems, and installing renewable energy devices at building level. But also you got to look at different phases, including the design, planning and design stage and construction stage, and also operation stages. And within the transportation sector, there is the land use layout, which is important to reduce the needs for long distance travel or commuting, and also the transportation network that invites people to take the public transports. And you need to optimize the service provision by transportation, also logistics, and the green energy vehicles. You can look at the hydrogen or electricity ones. And from the industrial sector, it's important to look at the energy efficiency through the industrial processes, and also to limit the use of materials or techniques that can create significant emissions. And you got to look at new technologies such as the circular economy for waste and recycling, or the carbon capture. Additionally, I think citizens' lifestyle are important, because personal carbon emissions, along with the consumption and services purchased from various sectors, they can amount up to 45% of the emissions by city. So how everyone actually choose to where to use, to eat, live, and travel really matters. And thirdly, carbon sequestration, such as the trees, wetlands, or agriculture, such as the urban farming, they are really important as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dominique, please.
Yes, good afternoon to all, bonjour to all in Geneva, and first of all also let me express my sympathy for the Geneva city, which is a little bit my second home, as the ITU is based in Geneva, and as I'm a neighbor coming from France, so we very often come to Geneva, but unfortunately today, I'm sorry, but I couldn't manage that given some other constraints, but I'm happy to be part of that panel, of course. And thank you also for inviting ITU representative, because we heard several speakers coming from the IEC sphere, which is not known for me, because as you said, I'm part of the AFNOR, the French NSO system. But just to say, so this is a little bit bit a different point of view, different way of working, and let's say different consideration that I will try to express in addition to all what has been said, because what is the most important is that we all complement each other and have a good coordination, and let's say to express some current actions. And there are many things in common. So now coming back to your question, from the ICT point of view, which is clearly the main scope of the ITU, for us, reducing the environmental impact of cities need to address 3 domains. First of all, implement a circular economy. Shengfeng just mentioned that, and I will elaborate on that. That means utilize assets and resources more efficiently, produce more sustainability, and apply circular design for large-scale positive impacts. In addition to that, of course, we can also, there is a need, the second domain is to accelerate smart, sustainable cities and to build a green network. But as said, and this has not been mentioned during the previous panel, maybe is it important to focus on the circular economy. And if you allow me, I will take just 1 minute just to recall that these circular economy principles for us represent a great potential in improving sustainability in cities and communities. That means sharing, recycling, refurnishing, reusing, replacing, or digitizing, which are identified as some of the circular actions that can be applied to a wide range of city assets. In addition of that, of course, any practices that enables more sustainable environmental styles of life are essentials. And city assets in this case may refer to city infrastructures such as building. I will come back on that later. Public spaces, water, that has been mentioned in the first panel, energy and mobility infrastructure. Shengfeng just mentioned that. So let's say, and I would like to highlight that a circular economy provides cities the opportunity to rethink how they make and use the things that they need. In fact, cities have a pivotal role to play in the global circular transitions. And we, within ITU, we consider that they are the centers of innovations and political and grassroots for actions. Cities, let's say in some other words, are the key sectors for the circular economy, such as transport and solid waste resides. They can use city also their influence, this influence in and decision-making power to move away from the linear economy, which is currently the major trend, and to promote, facilitate, and enable circular economy. So having said that, you asked, Mr. Chairman, for a concrete example. I will maybe take one, which is, and this is the work we are doing within Study Group 5, which is related to the impact of buildings and on the environment. There are some studies and saying that this represents more than 30% of the total global final energy use, and it's about 20% of energy-related GHG emissions. And we think, and that is our work, that therefore digitalizations and smart controls can reduce emissions from buildings by 350 million tons of carbon by 2050. And what is most, let's say, and that will be my last point, is that the digital technologies play a crucial role in the transition to circular city, because they optimize the utilizations of city assets and enable energy and resource efficiency. In a circular city, sustainable city or community, materials and resources stays in use for as long as possible. And building and public infrastructures are designed to be more energy efficient, durable, adaptable. And just to mention one concrete example, within Study Group 5 in ITU, we have developed one recommendation, which is L.1371, a methodology for assessing and scoring the sustainability performance of office building. And this specifies the methodology for assessing and scoring, and subsequently, of course, improving the sustainability performance of the existing office building. And this is based on 10 key areas: energy, water, air, comfort, health, wellness, purchasing, custodial waste, etc. So you see there are some concrete actions taken. But to summarize my point, one was to highlight also the need of a circular economy, which is to be taken into account. We do speak about a circular economy by design in some words. And after that, there are some concrete examples, even applying to the buildings by using the digital technologies.
Thank you very much, Dominic, for these insights. You mentioned information and communication technology, which is, I think, an important part. I don't know if Shanfeng, you would like to come in on that topic? Please.
Yeah. Okay. So I understand it's about the ICT usage in cities. So to me, ICT is actually the key carrier and enabler for changing the way that citizens are living and working. And by improving the efficiency and operation of the cities. And so to me, it further contributes to reducing the carbon emissions. There are several aspects that we look at. First is about it stimulates the economic transition with offering various new possibilities and allowing emerging business activities, such as the supporting organizations to digitalize their management processes, service provision, and procurement. For example, you can save air travels by hosting virtual webinars. That's just one very small example. And also it enables the collection of real-time feedback for better energy efficiency, I would say. And also it enables integration of the data within your supply chain. And this can minimize the redundant logistics emissions and other costs. And I think it also supports the digitalizing the governance capability of the cities. One is by encouraging information sharing among the citizens, enterprises, and public services to optimize the response and aid low carbon and low cost decision-making processes. And the other example is to support the urban planning digitally that engages wider public participation. So you can gather data from various sources to aid analysis, and also you can help with the proposing new urban forms to suit the practical needs. For example, you can optimize the bus routes by citizens. And finally, I think it also improves the capability of urban infrastructure to be more low carbon. One is you can optimize the traffic load and reduce the traffic jam and transportation emissions. And also such as the smart grid, then you can lower the peak demand and reduce the redundant supply. So I think it's really useful in cities. And moreover, I think the future development of ICT is incompatible with many other new technologies. And this can further push the digital transformation of various links and spots in multiple sectors that relevant to carbon emissions, such as the IoT, Internet of Things, and city information modeling. One is to connect with buildings and one is to connect with the devices. And also there are application of artificial intelligence and the blockchain. For example, for the carbon trade, probably in the future, the information can be recorded to allow the traceability and transparency for those carbon trading activities. So that's all my view towards ICT, very useful in city. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You mentioned artificial intelligence, and previously in the chat there were questions about the use and the regulation of artificial intelligence. I don't know, Dominic, would you like to reflect on that perhaps?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. First of all, I wanted to complement what Shanfeng has said on the impact of, let's say, ICTs and digitalizations, because this is really important and it is the core for our work. And but of course, I will address that because we do take on board artificial intelligence issues. So I will address that in a second point, as we do have, let's say, some kind of specific tool or organization, specific platform, I would say, which is in charge of artificial intelligence and addresses these issues. So we can come back, and of course, it's important. But just in 1 or 2 minutes on the first part, on this role of the ICTs in leveraging to reduce carbon emission, I think it's also important to mention that the digital technologies contribute to in many ways to solve the most current pressing challenge of the world, and including climate change. And we think that the ICTs have the potential to slash global GHG emissions by 20% by 2030. And this is by helping companies and consumers to more intelligently use and save energy. For people interested, we have developed within Study Group 5 an international standard, which is ITU L.1470, greenhouse gas emission trajectories for the information and communication technology sector compatible with the UNFCCC Paris Agreement. And this provides, because it's important, and it was said at during the first panel, it's important to have some common measurement. And this recommendation provides detailed trajectories for GHG emissions for the ICT sectors, with the global aim, which is still accurate, to support 1.5% objective described by the International Panel on Climate Change. And just to say, because we are engaged in a collaborative effort, I mentioned in my introduction, this standard has been developed not only by ITUT, but also with some other organizations, such as GISAI, GSMA, so private sector, and the SBTI. And to say, to adapt that on the theme for today regarding the city level, we do have also a specific standard, which is ITUT L.1440, which provides the methodology for the environmental impact assessment of the ICT at city level. And this methodology also allows authorities, policymakers, and all ICT experts and the industry on planning authorities to assess the ICT-related GHG emissions and the energy consumption at the city level. So now coming back to the more technical things, Feng mentioned the smart measurings, for example, on electricity consumption, the data center operation. We can develop that. That is our business. The LTE network operations, also regarding the transport domain, the communications module that help to monitor the replacements and the maintenance of the vehicles, to reduce the kilometers from vehicles and things like that. And now what is the challenge for us is that we are impacted by some new technologies, and I come to your question, Mr. Chairman, regarding artificial intelligence. There are many developments going on. Artificial intelligence is, let's say, part of the mandate now of all international organizations. Is it within ISO, IEC, and of course ITUT? It is not everybody speaking about that. Is like maybe more than a buzzword, but it is such a huge domain that we need to take it step by step. And what we have done within ITU is to have a global initiative, which is called AI for Good, which address many topics that can help the implementations of that and the use of artificial intelligence. But also we do have a specific focus group which is addressing artificial intelligence. This focus group on artificial intelligence and Internet of Things can address several domains. We have begun by working not on cities on this forest one, but on digital agriculture, for example, and on natural disaster management. But just to say that it is a flexible tool, it's some kind of open platform that help address how artificial intelligence can support countries to better adapt, in our specific case, to natural disasters, and to help to address the core challenges and opportunities, for example, for the first example on agriculture. This is part of global collaboration, I would say.
Thank you very much, and thank you for these very concrete examples. That brings me to my last round to ask Xiangfeng if you can think about any concrete type of new urban standards you are working on, or you think the international community should working on. And given we have a few minutes left, I would like to ask this same question to the previous two speakers, Michael and Bernard, afterwards. Xiangfeng?
Okay, thank you. Yes, within ISO TC 268 that we work for the smart, sustainable cities and communities, and there are a number of documents relevant to this topic. First one is the ISO 37101, which provides the management system for sustainable development. So it's an overarching one. And also there is the ISO 37106, and that's the guidance for establishing smart city operating models. So these two are already published. And we also have two new work items that just started last year. One is the ISO 37114. It's about the data treatment and data sets for urban information framework, and that's jointly developed with SC42, JTC1 SC42 on artificial intelligence. So it's more like data sets to be AI compatible in future. So because the quantum of the data for the city will be very big, and we think AI would support that. And also we registered another technical document, which is 37115. That's the use cases on lower carbon emission cities towards net zero. And there are a lot of topics discussed there, and we probably will start from the planning of it. And this document actually aims to provide case studies with analysis of the policies, supporting techniques, tools and methods, management approaches, financing mechanisms that drive to achieve the low carbon emissions for cities towards net zero, whilst respecting various contexts such as climate conditions, scales, available resources, or economic structures. So this would be a specific document for low carbon emissions, but we will collect global city practices that committed to lower carbon emissions as a key step towards net zero in response to the climate change. There's also several ISO documents we will be in line with, including the IWA 42 on net zero guidelines. And also there's the adaptation planning and approaches provided by the ISO 14092. So it will be a document that in line with all other already deliverables on lower carbon emissions that we have within ISO. Thank you.
Thank you very much. With the agreement of my co-moderator colleague Andrea, then let's turn back to our previous speakers with this last question. Any new urban standards you wish for or you are working on?
No, I think Xiangfeng is an extremely active member and leader also in my technical committee at ISO level, TC 268. So everything has been said on the new ones. What we definitely need also to consider, probably in the revision of the management system standards 3711, is to consider adaptation to climate change issues. There is a huge demand from cities following, especially last year in Europe, this severe weather pattern we were not used to have in such an intensity. We are used in other parts of the world, but now it is also something when we speak about urban development, integrated planning approach, long-term vision, there is a need to consider a measure to adaptation to climate change. A lot of people believe that now we committed with the Paris Agreement, there is no need to speak about adaptation, we solve the issues of climate change. Wow, guys, this is really reductive. So that's very certainly something to do. On the mobility side, we have a subcommittee about mobility, sustainable mobility. We have now also some initiative regarding swappable batteries for light categories of vehicles that will be recharged in a charging station, that will also offer a kind of interesting storage capacity for playing a role in microgrid for the electricity production from renewables. And this is something that will also impact the way cities and urban development will progress in the future in the direction of carbon neutrality. And as Xiangfeng said at the end also, Moving to carbon neutrality means transition, but more than transition. It is really a breakthrough compared to the incremental improvement we have now. And it is probably something we need to tackle as soon as possible at ISO level with this holistic approach again.
Thank you very much. Michael?
So we've just published in the IEC Smart City Systems Committee one really good practical standard. It's quite focused. It's about city service continuity against disaster, the role of the electrical system, and it's providing some good practice examples of how cities can manage the electrical supply within that city in a way that makes it resilient to disaster. Because the challenge, of course, is that pretty well every system in the city depends on electricity, and when there's a disaster, the first thing almost that needs to happen is for the electricity to go up to allow, for instance, Wi-Fi, telecoms, water, all of these things, many of them depend on electrical systems. So that's something we're very proud of, and we've heard very good reports back that it's very helpful and practical for cities. But I guess in general, my big wish, and it's coming true, is better collaboration between all of us in the international standardization world. The challenge for cities is that there are many different issues that need to be dealt with together, and that means coordination between experts from not only the three standards development organizations represented here, ITU, ISO and IEC, but also within each of them to the many specialist technical committees. And we've done a good first step in the joint Smart City Task Force, and that's already helping us to align our work and become much more focused. We've seen some real progress in that way. And also now we're starting to develop joint working groups to make sure we can come up with, if you like, programs of standards that will help address the complexity of city needs. So I think that's my one real wish, is that we'll continue this path of even better collaboration and coordination to provide the standards in ways that will really help cities have the packages that they need to tackle the issues that are important to them.
Thank you. Isabel, are you with us still? Would you come in on this question?
Hello?
Yes.
Yes. Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What type of new urban standards you are working on, or you think the international community should work on now or in the future?
I think there is an important thing about the adaptation to climate change issues. And I think in ISO TC 224, we are working on adaptation of water services, which means drinking water, water supply, but also wastewater treatment, but also stormwater management, and adaptation to this, to climate change. And there is an ISO 24566 series, which is under development. And this, I think, will be very important, because we have to face that. We have also issues about digitalization. I think we were talking a lot about the importance of smart cities. And I think in the water business, we are developing also specific standard for the digitalization of water services. And there is a standard under international inquiry now, which is 24591, and I think it can help the technical services, water technical services in the cities to better implement digitalization in their services. And so this is also a key issue for me, digitalization and facing climate change.
Thank you very much. Dalia, your view?
Yes, what we are working on is, again, we are looking on the efficiency of the water system. So we are working on those apparatus that you can monitor your water use, and they can be far readable monitors. So this is what we are focusing, and especially those managing standards for efficiency of water system. So these are the main projects that we are dealing with these days.
Thank you very much. I know it's very difficult after all these ideas, but Marcel, would you add any areas to this discussion?
Not really. I have nothing to add. I think it was a very interesting discussion on all of these three topics, and we see here that we indeed have international standards. They are in support of these authorities, and of course we need the authorities to contribute to the standardization process on all of these levels. To even produce better standards, and I think all this the discussion shown in a very good way. Yes.
Thank you very much. I totally agree. I think it was a great discussion around all these issues. On behalf of Geneva Cities Hub, I would like to thank our speakers, our partner ISO to organize this event. And given the fact that most of the questions, luckily, were about how to join your work and how to contribute, I would leave you the final words, Andrea, to tell how cities can.
May I, before Andrea is speaking, just half a minute comment, please? Dominic speaking, yes, because referring to what Michael has said and other speakers, I think it's important to highlight, and there has been a question in the chat, the importance of the global collaborations. And this is just to mention that there is an important program, which is the United for Smart Sustainable Cities initiative, which is a global United Nations UN initiative coordinated by ITU, UNECE, and UN Habitat and things like that. That is very important to address that point. They have a dedicated subgroup on the cities. And the other comment I would like to make is that it's not only about adopt standards on give guidelines and things like that. Somebody said to implement that, and also to have some capacity building actions and to develop some toolkits to help to implement that standards. So I stop here, but just there is a toolkit on digital transformation for people-oriented cities and communities, and I think that's also helpful to further let know what we are all making. I stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dominic. Very valuable input. Andrea, for
yes, just I would encourage you to go to our webpage, iso.org, and look for our list of members, and then you can find who is our member in your country. Please reach out to them. They will be happy to help you and explain you how to participate in ISO work, and see if they are already participating in the topics that they're interested in, and if not, then maybe you will convince them to do so. And thank you very much for your time and for listening to us. I really hope this has been useful for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and hope to see you all at our next event, Geneva Cities Hub. We are very happy to be this platform to bring local and regional governments to the global discussion, mostly in Geneva, but all around the world in the multilateral organizations. Once again, thanks for ISO, thanks for the colleagues, for Antu, for Pauline, and you can also see the news on our website later on. Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.